Rancher rented a house for one night, but found an Apache woman had been hiding there for weeks. Moving cattle across long distances, fixing broken fences, and enduring the scorching sun had left him exhausted. He was dusty from head to toe, his clothes stiff with dried sweat and dirt. His boots had seen better days, soles worn down from the constant travel, and his hat, a trusted companion for years, was bent from hours under the relentless sun. The open land, beautiful and harsh at the same time, stretched endlessly in every direction, and John felt a deep, familiar weariness settle over him. He had been planning to stop in a small town not far from the cattle ranches he had been tending. He didn't know much about the town except that it had a few houses and a general store, enough to rest for the night and stock up on supplies. He wanted nothing more than a simple room where he could lay down, wash off the dirt, and eat something hot. As he rode his horse along the uneven trail leading into town, the distant sight of a small house caught his eye. It was modest, made of wood, with a small porch and a chimney that looked as though it had seen many winters. It wasn't fancy, but it looked clean, solid, and inviting. John guided his horse closer and noticed a weathered sign nailed to a post near the porch, "House for rent, one night only." He chuckled to himself, thinking it was perfect. He dismounted and knocked on the door. After a moment, an older man appeared, eyes cautious but welcoming. They exchanged greetings, and John explained that he needed a place for just one night. The man nodded, smiled faintly, and gave him the key, warning him that the house had not been occupied for a while. John paid the fee, thanked the man, and led his horse to a nearby stable. The inside of the house smelled faintly of wood and dust. Sunlight streamed through the windows, revealing old wooden floors and simple furniture, a small table, 2 chairs, and a bed in the corner. As John placed his pack down, he noticed things that made him pause. There were footprints in the dust on the floor, some near the table, some leading toward the back of the house. A small fire had been burned recently in the hearth. The ashes were still warm, suggesting someone had been here not long ago. Folded clothing sat neatly on a chair. At first, John assumed it was left behind by a previous renter and didn't think much of it. He set about making himself comfortable, brushing off the dust from his clothes and lighting a small lantern. He hung his hat on a hook by the door and sat at the table, pouring a little water from his canteen to drink. The house was quiet, except for the occasional creak of the floorboards and the soft whistle of the wind through the cracks in the wooden walls. As the day faded and shadows grew long, John's tired eyes began to wander, taking in the details he had ignored earlier. There was a subtle movement in the corner of his vision. He turned sharply, thinking it might be a trick of the fading light, but the movement persisted. At first he called out, asking if anyone was there, but there was no reply. His heart began to beat faster. He wasn't sure what to expect. After all, he had been in remote areas before, and the idea of encountering strangers, or worse, wasn't new to him. Yet something about this house felt different, almost as if it held a secret that had been waiting for him to uncover it. He moved cautiously toward the back of the house, lantern in hand, and that's when he saw her. A woman was crouched near the far corner, her dark hair falling around her face. Her eyes were wide with fear, and she froze the moment she saw him. She looked like she had been living there quietly, surviving off the food and water she had found. Her clothing was simple, worn from weeks of use, but she carried herself with a quiet strength. John stopped a few feet away, holding up his hand slightly to show he meant no harm. Who are you?" he asked softly, careful not to startle her. The woman's voice was barely a whisper. I didn't mean to. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just needed a place to stay for the night." John understood that she had been alone for some time, relying on her wits and courage to survive. She had been hiding in a place that seemed empty to everyone else, yet it had been her shelter for weeks. As the evening wore on, John began to understand more about the woman without her needing to say much. Her eyes reflected wisdom and resilience, and though she was clearly weary, she carried herself with quiet dignity. He offered her some bread and cheese he had in his pack, and she ate slowly, as though savoring each bite after days of careful rationing. The silence between them was not uncomfortable. It was filled with an unspoken understanding. Both had lived hard lives shaped by the land they called home. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the dry grass and shaking the thin walls of the house. John could hear it whistling through the cracks, carrying with it the scent of dust and earth. He glanced at the woman again, noticing the subtle way she flinched at every sound, alert to every movement. Her fear was understandable. In the world she had come from, trust was dangerous. Yet in the same moment he could see a spark of curiosity, a cautious hope that perhaps she had found someone who could be trusted, even if only for a night. John decided to keep busy, tidying up the small house, preparing a small fire in the hearth, and making it as comfortable as possible. The woman watched him quietly, her eyes softening slightly. She didn't speak much, but John could feel her presence as a silent acknowledgement that he respected her space and her need for safety. By the time night had fully fallen, the house was warm, the fire crackling softly, and a fragile sense of calm settled over the two unlikely companions. Though exhausted, John found it hard to sleep. He kept thinking about how strange and unexpected this encounter had been. A simple plan to rent a house for one night had led him to someone living in hiding, someone who had survived through courage and resourcefulness. He realized how often life could change in a single moment, how easily the ordinary could turn extraordinary. In the flickering firelight, he could see her face more clearly now, strong, determined, yet weary from days of hiding. The woman finally spoke in a low, careful voice. "I am Maria," she said. I didn't have anywhere else to go." The wind whispered outside, the fire crackled, and two strangers from different worlds shared the same small space. Though words were few, the night was filled with quiet connection. Both were aware that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, in the simple warmth of the small house, they found a fleeting moment of safety and understanding. As John lay on the bed that night, he reflected on the day's unexpected turn. A place he thought would offer him simple rest had instead become a refuge for someone in need. He realized that the land they both called home was not just harsh and unforgiving. It could also bring people together in ways that were surprising and meaningful. The night would be long, and sleep would come in short bursts, but both John and Maria had found in that moment a rare sense of trust and connection. Outside, the moon rose high, casting a silver glow over the plains. The house stood quietly, holding within its walls a story of courage, trust, and unexpected companionship. John didn't know how this encounter would end, but he knew one thing for certain. A simple night's stay had already changed him, leaving him with a sense of wonder at the resilience of those who live quietly and courageously in the world. And so, in the warmth of the fire and the quiet of the night, the rancher and the hidden woman shared a small, unspoken bond, marking the beginning of a story neither would forget. A story that had started with a simple house, a rented night, and a chance encounter that was destined to leave a lasting impression. The first light of dawn seeped through the small cracks in the wooden walls of the house. The wind was gentler now, carrying the scent of the plains and the faint aroma of wildflowers growing along the edges of the trail. John awoke slowly, stretching his tired muscles and rubbing the dust from his eyes. The night had been long, filled with quiet thoughts, the occasional creak of the house, and the crackle of the fire that had kept them warm. He glanced across the room and saw Maria sitting quietly by the window, her eyes watching the sunrise. She had slept little, but the brief rest had allowed her to gather her strength, her posture calm yet alert, as if ready to flee at the slightest hint of danger. John got up and stoked the fire, its warmth filling the small room. He poured himself some water and took a few sips, then offered a portion to Maria. She accepted with a nod, her hands trembling slightly as she held the cup. Neither spoke much. Words were unnecessary in that quiet moment. Both were aware of the tension that lingered between them, a tension born of circumstance, caution, and survival. They had shared a night in close quarters, yet both understood the delicate balance of trust that existed between them. After breakfast, John stepped outside to tend to his horse. He saddled it carefully, checking the reins and the worn leather of the saddle. The plains stretched out endlessly before him, the morning sun casting long shadows over the dry grass. He had a moment of peace, feeling the rhythm of life on the trail, but his thoughts kept drifting back to Maria. He wondered how she had survived all this time, hiding alone in a house that was supposed to be empty, finding food and water without being noticed. The thought impressed him. It was clear she had a sharp mind and a brave heart. Maria finally spoke, her voice soft but firm. "I didn't want anyone to find me," she said. "It's not safe for someone like me. People don't understand." John nodded, understanding her fear. He had lived on the plains long enough to know that the world could be unforgiving, especially to those who were alone and vulnerable. "I know," he said, "but you don't need to hide from me. I won't harm you." Birds chirped in the distance, the wind rustled the tall grass, and the occasional sound of a distant wagon echoed across the plains. The house, once a quiet refuge, now felt like a place where two worlds had unexpectedly collided. John and Maria were strangers, yet they shared an understanding that transcended words. Both had lived hard lives shaped by the land, both had known danger and hardship, and both were learning slowly to trust one another. John decided to ask more about Maria's story, hoping to understand how she had ended up in the small house. He chose his words carefully, aware that pushing too hard might frighten her. "How long have you been here?" he asked gently. Maria hesitated, then replied in a low voice, "Weeks, maybe more. I don't remember exactly. I had to keep moving, find a safe place." Her eyes were distant as she spoke, reflecting memories that were painful and complex. John listened without interruption, giving her space to share what she felt safe sharing. She continued, describing her journey with quiet determination. She spoke of leaving her village after conflict had forced her to flee, of traveling under the cover of night, and of relying on her wits and knowledge of the land to survive. John was struck by her courage. He had faced dangers on the plains many times, but her story revealed a type of bravery he rarely encountered. Maria had endured hardships that would have broken many, yet she remained strong, her spirit unyielding. As the morning wore on, John realized that he needed to help her, at least in some small way. The house was temporary, and while it had provided shelter for a short time, it could not remain a long-term solution. He could see that Maria needed a plan, a safe place, and perhaps a chance to rebuild a sense of normalcy. But before he could consider the next steps, he focused on the present, ensuring she had enough food and water for the day. He brought out bread, dried meat, and fresh water, laying them carefully on the table. Maria accepted them gratefully, her movements careful and deliberate. Over the course of the day, they began to communicate more openly. John shared stories of his life as a rancher, the long hours tending cattle, repairing fences, and enduring the harsh sun and cold nights. He spoke of the pride and satisfaction that came with working the land, the deep connection he felt to the plains, and the simple joys of life after a long day of labor. Maria listened, her curiosity growing. Though their lives were different, she began to see the parallels, the struggle, the endurance, and the quiet strength required to survive in a world that was often harsh and unforgiving. Maria, in turn, spoke of her people, her village, and the traditions she had known before being forced to leave. She described the beauty of her homeland, the connection to the land, and the lessons she had learned from her elders. John was fascinated. He had spent his life on the plains, but her stories opened his eyes to a world he had never truly known. He began to understand that her presence in the house was not an intrusion. It was a reminder that the land held many stories, many lives intersecting in ways he had never imagined. As the afternoon sun rose higher, the two shared a quiet meal. John noticed how carefully Maria handled the food, how she savored each bite. It was clear that every meal had been precious to her, a reminder of the constant need for caution and resourcefulness. He admired her discipline and her ability to adapt, realizing that her survival had depended on skills that few others possessed. For his part, John offered guidance and reassurance, helping her understand that she did not need to hide from everyone, that there were places and people willing to help. The afternoon passed slowly, each moment filled with quiet reflection. John took the time to repair a small section of the house that had a broken floorboard, careful not to disturb Maria. She observed him silently, occasionally offering a nod of approval. There was a sense of mutual respect growing between them, a recognition of each other's strength and resilience. The house, once a simple shelter for a night, had transformed into a space of shared experience, where trust and understanding began to take root. As evening approached, the light changed, casting long shadows across the wooden floors. The wind picked up again, rustling the grass outside and whistling through the cracks in the walls. John and Maria sat near the fire, its warmth a comforting presence against the chill of the approaching night. They spoke sparingly, but the conversation that did occur was meaningful. John asked about her plans, her hopes for the future, and how she imagined life beyond hiding. Maria spoke cautiously, her voice tinged with both fear and hope. John realized that while he could not solve all her problems, he could offer guidance, support, and perhaps a connection to others who could help. He shared what he knew of the town, the people who might be sympathetic, and the possibilities for temporary refuge. Maria listened intently, weighing his words carefully. The thought of trusting someone was not easy for her, but she sensed the sincerity in John's tone and the genuine concern in his actions. The night eventually settled in, bringing darkness and quiet. The fire burned low, casting flickering shadows across the room. John and Maria sat side by side, both aware of the challenges that lay ahead, yet finding comfort in the simple fact that they were not alone. The house had become more than just a shelter. It was a place of temporary safety, where two strangers from different worlds could share a fragile bond of trust. Before going to bed, John ensured Maria had a comfortable place to rest. He arranged blankets for her near the fire, offering a small pillow and extra warmth. She accepted silently, her gratitude evident in her eyes. John himself lay down on the bed, reflecting on the day's events. He realized how quickly life could change, how a simple decision, to rent a house for one night, could lead to an encounter that would leave a lasting impression. Throughout the night, neither slept deeply. The wind whispered through the cracks, the fire crackled softly, and both remained alert. Yet there was a sense of quiet reassurance. John knew he could not remain in the house indefinitely, and Maria knew she would need to move again. But for this moment, they had found a rare sense of security and understanding. It was a fleeting peace, but one that would remain etched in their memories. By the time the moon rose high over the plains, the house stood quietly, holding within its walls the story of two lives intersecting unexpectedly. John and Maria had learned from each other the strength of resilience, the importance of trust, and the value of compassion. The day had been long, challenging, and yet rewarding in ways neither could have anticipated. The encounter had transformed a simple stopover into a meaningful chapter of their lives, one that would shape the choices and actions of the days to come. And so, the night continued, filled with quiet reflection, cautious trust, and a growing understanding that even in a harsh world, moments of connection and empathy could emerge when least expected. John and Maria were two souls brought together by circumstance, learning that survival was not only about strength, but also about the courage to trust, the willingness to share, and the humanity that could be found in the most unlikely of places. The following morning, the sun rose slowly over the plains, painting the horizon in shades of gold and amber. John stirred from his sleep, muscles aching from days of travel, yet his mind was restless with thoughts of Maria. She had slept lightly in the corner, her dark hair tangled slightly, her face calm but thoughtful. The quiet house felt different now, no longer just a shelter for a weary traveler, but a place where two lives were intertwined, even if only for a brief time. John quietly moved about, tending the small fire to keep the chill at bay. He fetched some water and poured it carefully into 2 cups, offering one to Maria. She took it with a nod, her movements still careful and deliberate, a reflection of weeks spent hiding and surviving alone. For a moment they drank in silence, listening to the distant sounds of the plains, the rustling grass, the chirping of birds, the faint neigh of horses nearby. The morning air was crisp and fresh, carrying a sense of possibility that seemed almost fragile. After a while, John spoke gently. "You must be tired of hiding all the time," he said. "It can't be easy staying alone like this." Maria's eyes flickered toward him and she hesitated before responding. "It's been hard," she admitted softly, "but I didn't have a choice. I had to survive and I had nowhere else to go." Her voice was quiet but steady, revealing a resilience that John found remarkable. She had endured days, maybe weeks, of uncertainty, hunger, and fear, and yet she remained composed, her spirit unbroken. John nodded, understanding more than she could know. Life on the plains was often harsh and unforgiving, and survival required both courage and patience. "I know," he said. "I've seen a lot in my time, and I know what it takes to get through tough days." "You've done well to come this far." Maria's eyes softened slightly at his words. She had spent so long trusting no one that even a simple acknowledgement of her strength felt rare and valuable. The conversation turned slowly to her journey. She told him how she had left her village in the dead of night, escaping a conflict that had uprooted her family and friends. She described traveling along hidden trails, sleeping in abandoned cabins, and finding water and food wherever she could. John listened carefully, noting the details without interruption. Each word she spoke painted a vivid picture of a young woman forced to navigate a dangerous world alone, yet managing to survive through intelligence, courage, and careful observation. As Maria spoke, John could not help but admire her determination. He thought of his own life, which, though hard in its own way, had never required such stealth and resourcefulness. Her story was a testament to human resilience, a reminder that people could endure more than they often realized. He realized that this encounter was not just a meeting of two strangers, but a moment of learning, reflection, and empathy. By midday, John decided to help Maria in a practical way. The house provided temporary shelter, but it was not a permanent solution. She needed a place where she could stay safely without the constant fear of being discovered. John began thinking carefully about the town nearby, the people he knew, and the possibilities for temporary refuge. He knew he had to tread carefully. Any wrong step could put her at risk, but he also understood that leaving her to wander alone was not an option. He spoke gently to her. "Maria, I want to help you, but we need a plan. You can't stay here forever. There are people in town who might be able to give you a safe place for a while. I can guide you there when the time is right." Maria considered his words, her eyes thoughtful. Trusting someone had not come easily to her, yet she sensed the sincerity in John's voice. She nodded slowly, a small step toward allowing herself to accept help. The afternoon was spent in careful preparation. John shared what he knew about the town, the routes that were safest, and how to avoid unnecessary attention. He taught Maria a few practical tips: how to carry herself in public, how to appear calm even when afraid, and how to read subtle signs of danger. Maria listened intently, absorbing every detail. She realized that while she had survived alone, guidance from someone experienced like John could increase her chances of staying safe. As they talked, a bond began to form between them. It was a quiet bond, built on mutual respect and understanding rather than words alone. John admired her courage, while Maria recognized his wisdom and kindness. They shared a sense of camaraderie that transcended their different backgrounds, a rancher and a woman hiding from danger, brought together by circumstance and the land they both navigated. The house, once a simple rented shelter, had become a space where trust and understanding could grow, even amid uncertainty. By late afternoon, John suggested they take a short walk outside. The plain stretched wide and open, the sky a brilliant blue dotted with wisps of clouds. They moved carefully, keeping to the edges of the small town where the grass was taller and provided some cover. Maria's eyes scanned the surroundings constantly, a reminder of how accustomed she had become to vigilance. John walked beside her, offering quiet reassurance and guidance. For the first time in weeks, Maria felt a small sense of normalcy, walking under the sun, feeling the wind on her face and knowing someone was looking out for her. During the walk, they spoke about lighter things, the land, the weather, and the animals that roamed the plains. John told her about the cattle he managed, the challenges of moving them across long distances, and the satisfaction of a day's work done well. Maria listened, occasionally asking questions, her curiosity emerging as her fear began to ease slightly. She began to see that life could have moments of calm and joy, even amid hardship and danger. Returning to the house, they shared a simple meal together. John had brought some bread and dried meat, while Maria contributed what little she had managed to carry. They ate quietly, the silence comfortable now, filled with an unspoken understanding. John could see that Maria was beginning to trust him, that the tension of the previous days was easing. It was a small but significant shift, one that would make the challenges ahead more manageable. As evening approached, John focused on practical matters. He needed to ensure that when the time came to move Maria to a safer place, everything would be ready. He prepared a small pack with essentials, water, food, and a few personal items she might need. Maria helped, carefully placing the items in the bag, each movement deliberate and thoughtful. They worked together efficiently, a silent team preparing for the next phase of their journey. Night fell slowly, bringing with it the cool breeze of the plains. The fire burned low in the hearth, casting flickering shadows across the wooden walls. John and Maria sat close, sharing stories and memories, both aware that the night would be long and their journey ahead uncertain. Maria spoke of her village, of the people she had loved, and of the life she had been forced to leave behind. John listened, offering quiet comfort, understanding the depth of her loss and the weight of her courage. By the time the moon rose high above the plains, the two sat quietly near the fire. Their conversation had grown more personal, more reflective. John shared his own experiences, the challenges of life on the ranch, and the lessons he had learned from the land. Maria listened, occasionally offering her own thoughts, finding comfort in the shared understanding. They had come to realize that, despite their differences, they shared common experiences, resilience, patience, and the determination to survive in a world that was often harsh and unforgiving. Throughout the night, John and Maria planned their next steps carefully. He would help her find a temporary safe place in town, someone she could trust until it was possible to return to her village or find a more permanent solution. Maria, in turn, began to trust John's judgment, recognizing his sincerity and wisdom. The bond they had formed was fragile but growing, built on respect, understanding, and the shared experience of facing uncertainty together. As sleep finally claimed them in small bursts, the house remained quiet, standing as a witness to their growing connection. Outside, the wind whispered through the grass, the fire's glow softened into embers, and the vast plains stretched endlessly under the moonlight. John and Maria had begun a journey not just of survival, but of trust, understanding, and shared humanity. The night had tested them both, but it had also shown them the power of courage, empathy, and the unexpected bonds that could form even in the harshest circumstances. By dawn, they would continue their journey, taking careful steps towards safety and hope. The lessons of the day were clear. Strength could be found in courage, and trust could emerge even in the most unlikely of places. John had learned that helping someone like Maria required patience, understanding, and compassion, while Maria had begun to see that survival did not mean facing the world entirely alone. Together, They had discovered a fragile but profound connection that would guide them through the days ahead, shaping the choices and actions that would define the rest of their journey. The morning broke slowly over the plains, the sun painting the sky with soft shades of gold and pink. John awoke first, feeling the chill of the early air and the faint stiffness from a night spent on the simple bed. He glanced across the room and saw Maria sitting quietly near the window, her dark eyes fixed on the horizon. The small house was still and calm, a temporary haven from the uncertainty of the outside world. Both of them knew that today would mark a turning point. The time had come to leave this refuge and take the next steps towards safety. John began by tending the fire, carefully adding small pieces of wood to ensure it would last through their preparations. He poured water into 2 cups, offering one to Maria, who accepted with a nod and a faint smile. Though their words were few, there was a quiet understanding between them. The events of the past days had formed a bond built on trust, respect, and shared experience. Maria's presence no longer carried the tension of fear. It had shifted to a sense of cautious hope, the first small step toward a future that no longer needed to be lived entirely in hiding. After a simple breakfast, John spoke gently about their plans. "Maria," he began, "we need to move carefully today. I know it's not easy to trust people, but I have someone in town who can help you for a while. They will give you shelter and keep you safe until it's possible to decide what comes next." Maria's eyes met his, reflecting both hesitation and a flicker of relief. She had been alone for weeks, surviving on her own, and the thought of relying on someone else brought both hope and fear. They packed their few belongings carefully, John watching as Maria folded each item with precision and care. The pack contained essentials: water, some bread, a few personal items, and a small blanket. Everything was simple, yet it represented weeks of survival and adaptation. John adjusted the pack to sit securely on his horse, then helped Maria secure her own. Each action was deliberate, reflecting their shared understanding of caution and preparedness. As they stepped outside, the plain stretched endlessly before them, vast and open, bathed in the soft morning light. The wind carried the familiar scents of earth and grass, a reminder of both the harshness and beauty of this land. Maria walked beside John, her movements steady, yet alert, scanning the surroundings with the trained caution of someone used to danger. John offered quiet guidance, showing her the safest paths and warning her of any potential risks. Though the town was not far, the journey required vigilance and care. During the walk, they spoke softly, sharing thoughts about the past days. John recounted more stories of life on the ranch, the hardships he had endured, and the lessons learned from long days and difficult decisions. Maria listened, occasionally asking questions, her curiosity growing as she felt more at ease. She began to share small details of her own life, her voice quiet but steady, reflecting the resilience that had carried her through weeks of hiding. Their conversation was a delicate balance of stories, advice, and cautious trust, a reflection of the bond that had formed between them. As they approached the town, John pointed out people who might help, observing their demeanor and assessing their trustworthiness. "See that man over there?" he asked. "He runs a small store and is known for helping those in need. If we go quietly, he might provide you a safe place for a short while." Maria nodded, absorbing the information carefully. She had learned to read people quickly, and John's guidance helped her navigate the unfamiliar social landscape. Though she was still cautious, she felt a growing sense of hope, a rare feeling after so many days of constant fear. Once they reached the town, John led Maria to a small house on the edge of the settlement. The owner, a kindly woman named Sarah, greeted them warmly. She had heard of travelers in need and was willing to offer temporary shelter. Maria's eyes widened slightly at the kindness shown to her, a feeling she had not experienced for a long time. John spoke quietly with Sarah, explaining the situation without revealing too much that might endanger Maria. Sarah nodded, understanding the delicate balance of trust required in such circumstances. Maria stepped inside the small house, the walls safe and familiar in their simplicity. She set down her pack, feeling the comfort of a place where she could finally rest without the constant fear of discovery. John remained outside for a moment, watching over the town and the surrounding area, his protective instincts not easily set aside. He could see the relief in Maria's posture, the way her shoulders relaxed, and the faint smile that appeared on her face. It was a small but meaningful victory, the first step toward reclaiming a sense of normalcy. After ensuring that Maria was settled, John walked with her to the edge of the small garden. He spoke gently, offering advice for the coming days. "Stay quiet at first," he said. "Observe the people here, understand who can be trusted. Take your time to adjust. You've survived so far because you were careful. Don't forget that now." Maria nodded, appreciating the guidance and the care in his voice. She understood that survival was not just about finding shelter, but also about knowing how to navigate the world with wisdom and caution. As the day progressed, Maria explored her temporary surroundings, careful not to draw attention. She found a small kitchen where she could prepare simple meals and a quiet corner where she could rest. The house was modest but sufficient, a safe space where she could regain her strength and plan the next steps of her journey. John watched from a short distance, ensuring that she was safe before preparing to leave. He had done what he could for now, but he knew that the bonds they had formed and the lessons shared would guide her in the days ahead. Before leaving, John spoke to Maria once more. "You've shown incredible strength," he said. "Remember, you don't need to face the world alone anymore. There are people willing to help, and you've proven you can survive anything. Keep that courage with you." Maria looked up at him, her eyes glistening with gratitude. She had been alone for so long, and the kindness he had shown, combined with his wisdom and calm presence, had given her hope she hadn't felt in weeks. John mounted his horse, preparing to continue his journey. He looked back at Maria one last time, seeing her standing in the doorway of the small house, a figure of resilience and hope. She gave a small wave, a silent acknowledgement of their shared experience and the bond that had formed. John tipped his hat and smiled faintly, feeling a sense of fulfillment. Though their paths would now diverge, the encounter had left an indelible mark on both of them, a reminder of the power of trust, empathy, and human connection. As John rode away, the wind carried the sound of the plains, rustling the tall grass and whispering through the trees. He thought about the unexpected turn of events, how a simple decision to rent a house for one night had led to helping someone in need, and how that small act had created a meaningful connection. Life on the plains was unpredictable, full of challenges and surprises, yet it also offered moments of profound humanity and understanding. Meanwhile, Maria settled into her temporary refuge, feeling a sense of safety she hadn't experienced in weeks. The kindness of John and the willingness of Sarah to help her had reminded her that the world could still offer moments of compassion, even in difficult times. She reflected on the lessons she had learned, the importance of caution, the value of trust, and the strength that comes from facing life's challenges with courage. Days passed, and Maria began to adapt to her new surroundings. She followed John's advice, observing the people in the town, learning who could be trusted, and gradually finding her footing. Each small step built her confidence, allowing her to reclaim a sense of autonomy and security. Though she still thought of her village and the life she had been forced to leave behind, she realized that she had the strength to navigate the world ahead. John continued his journey across the plains, the memory of the small house and the brave woman he had helped remaining with him. He reflected on the encounter, realizing that acts of kindness and compassion, even in small ways, could leave a lasting impact. Maria's courage and resilience had inspired him, and he knew that the bond they had formed, however brief, would remain a part of his life forever. As weeks turned into months, both John and Maria carried the lessons of that encounter with them. Maria grew stronger and more confident, using the guidance and support she had received to find safety and stability. John continued his work on the ranch, but the memory of Maria and the night in the small house reminded him of the profound impact of human connection. They had shared a fleeting but meaningful moment, a reminder that even in a harsh and unforgiving world, trust, compassion, and courage could shine through. And so, the story concluded not with dramatic events or danger, but with quiet strength and hope. Two lives had intersected unexpectedly, each leaving a mark on the other. The rancher who had rented a house for one night had found more than rest. He had found an opportunity to help someone in need and to witness the remarkable courage of a young woman. The woman who had hidden in the house for weeks had discovered that trust and kindness could still exist, and that even in difficult circumstances, hope and human connection were possible. The plains remained vast and open, the sun rising and setting each day, but for John and Maria, the experience had changed them both. It was a story of courage, resilience, and the quiet power of empathy, a reminder that even the smallest acts can have a profound impact on the lives of others. And in that vast, open land, life went on. But the memory of that brief encounter and the trust and hope it inspired would remain forever.